Evening and welcome. This is Monday, October 14th, 2024. And this meeting of the Port of Olympia Commission is now called to order. We have, let's see. Commissioner Sanders, would you like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Have an agenda in front of us. Is there a motion to approve today's agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda, please. Can we move item J1, at least the first portion of it, with our guest speaker, Mr. Gadman, to after the consent calendar?
So there's a motion now to amend the agenda to move the presentation from Thurston County Treasurer Jeff Gadman to between consent calendar and pending business. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to amend the agenda, moving presentation by Jeff Gadman to between consent calendar and pending issues. Is there any discussion?
I just want to say that if it would be more appropriate to have it after pending issues and business for Commissioner Sanders, I'm totally open to that. If that would be better from a cadence perspective.
Are we amending the amendment?
I'll withdraw my amendment.
Okay.
And I will make another amendment. And business in between G1 and H. So following pending issues and business rather than proceeding.
Okay, we have a motion to amend the agenda, moving item J1, moving it up after G and before H. We have a motion and a second. Did I hear a second?
Second, I'll second.
And is there any discussion?
Just in respect for having guests and moving them up on the agenda so that it's quicker.
Okay.
Actually doesn't accomplish anything now that I'm looking at the agenda. Okay.
All right, is there any further discussion? Would anybody like to further amend the agenda?
Yes, I have an amendment, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
After meeting announcements, I would like to add executive session to continue the executive session that we were having before this meeting.
Okay, we have another amendment, motion to amend the agenda further by adding an executive session after meeting announcements to discuss the real estate. Is that what it was?
To discuss real estate, yeah.
Is there a second for that?
Second.
All right, we have a second amendment for the agenda to add an executive session to discuss the price of real estate at the end of the meeting after meeting announcement. Is there any discussion?
Our legal counsel, do we need to state the RCW in the?
If you just add to the motion, the RCW for it, I think it's in the special meeting. Announcement.
I will need help with that.
Kindly give it to us. We don't.
42, 30, 110, 1.
Here we go.
So, Mr. Chair, my motion is to add an executive session after item M to discuss real estate pursuant to RCW 42, 30, 110, 1B.
Okay. Did I hear a second for that? Yes, okay. And any further discussion? All right, we have, I will call for the vote to approve the agenda with two amendments. One, moving the advisory calendar after pending issues or business. And the second, adding executive session to discuss our RCW 40, to discuss real estate pursuant to RCW 42.30 110B. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we have an agenda. That was a chore. We got there. We got there. All right, so next we will go into the executive director report.
So many things going on these weeks, recent weeks. Today is Indigenous Peoples' Day, as you will hear more shortly. And just a short note that the port staff recognized it by taking a lunchtime walk-in tour on the Billy Frank Jr. Trail and checking out the beautiful signs we have recognizing the legacy of Indigenous people here in the Pacific Northwest. Earlier this week on Tuesday, we took a group of folks from the commission, from the Port of Olympia Community Advisory Committee, from the City of Olympia, and from the Thurston County Chamber up to the Port of Bellingham to take a look at what they have done in terms of integrating cleanup into their redevelopment on their waterfront. The port staff up at the Port of Bellingham was incredibly gracious and spent a whole lot of time with us, including all of their commissioners. And we learned a lot about what they did, why they did it, successes and partnerships and grants, and also some lessons that they learned. So again, huge thanks to the gang up at the Port of Bellingham for hosting this. And also a huge thanks to Camille and Missy for coordinating the trip, and Missy especially for making sure we were caffeinated and fed. The Working Lands Agricultural Tour. Commissioner Vasavada participated in the Working Lands Tour. It was hosted by the Thurston Economic Development Council, and it joined community organizations and elected officials. The tour gave a firsthand look at the essential role agriculture plays in our local community, and also ways that we can support our working lands. So thanks, Commissioner Vasavada, for her commitment to fostering a sustainable agriculture in Thurston County. Also, we got a tour from the Washington State Public Employment Relations Commission, otherwise known as PERC. They came and wanted to tour the port, and we really appreciate the opportunity to show them the port and share some insights about our operations and our initiatives. And I will take advantage of this to also thank PERC for providing a mediator to us that helped us get to a tentative agreement with our union, ILW 47B, on all terms, all provisions of a contract, including wages. And it's been a multi-year process, and huge thanks to the negotiating teams on both sides, but especially also to our mediator from PERC, Erin Sloan Gomez, who really helped make a big difference. She helped us see how we could get to agreement. So good news on that, and hopefully we will have a contract to bring to the commission at our next business meeting. We also wanted to congratulate Damian Egan, who started October 1st as the senior manager over at Swantown. He's entering into this pivotal role, and he's coming from being our marina and facilities maintenance supervisor. He's built a great relationship with the staff and the community here, and we're very excited to have him in this new role. Also last week, Tracy Aga from our Human Resources team attended the Thurston County Chamber's Future of Work Summit at Great Wolf Lodge over in Kitchen Mound. The event focused on innovative solutions for meaningful connections and embracing inclusive practices to build diverse teams. So we really appreciate that Tracy took the time to go to this and was bringing the valuable insights back to us here at the port. Also last week, Commissioner Harding held a town hall at LP Brown, and thanks to Commissioner Harding for initiating this. And we really appreciated everyone who came out and took the opportunity to just talk with Commissioner Harding about what folks were interested in and concerned about. So we look forward to having more of these. We also had a second integrated master plan webinar on, well, I forget the exact date we had that, but oh, there's October 2nd. And it provided another opportunity for folks just to learn basic background about the port. It's for folks who aren't as familiar with the port as some may be, and just to get an idea of what we're trying to do and what we're doing with our butt inlet cleanup. So thanks to Camille and Tabor and Jonathan for putting that on. And if folks are interested, please check out our website and feel free to send us an email or sign up for some newsletters. Also, coming up this week, Spark Hotel by Hilton will be doing a soft opening in Tumwater. It's a port tenant who's recently remodeled and rebranded the hotel, and we're very excited to support them and bring more hotel space to Tumwater. And last but not least, we value your input. Here are the many ways in which you can follow us and what we're doing and or communicate with us. So please do reach out if you have anything you'd like to talk to us about. That's it. Thank you, Penny.
Thank you. Thank you, Executive Director Smith. Is there any questions or comments? I will just say I'm very happy and proud of. That's outstanding, outstanding news. Okay, next up on our agenda is public comment. Individual public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Members of the public may comment on agenda items and other port business. The guidelines for public comment can be found in the Commission Rules and Resolution 2022-09, Article 6. Comments should be directed to the Commission as a whole and should not include comments about individual port staff or members of the public. All speakers shall be courteous in language and demeanor and shall confine remarks to those facts that are germane and relevant to the question or issue under discussion. I have Bob Jacobs signed up here. Mr. Jacobs, would you like to take the podium? And you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, I do.
Good, thank you. Bob Jacobs, 720 Governor Stevens Avenue in Olympia. Before I start my written testimony, let me just recognize that this is a special day, Indigenous Peoples Day. And mention, if anyone has not had a chance to read a book called A People's History of the United States, I strongly recommend you do that. I think it's the first chapter that goes over adventures of Christopher Columbus. And if anybody has any doubt about the appropriateness of replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day, I think those doubts would be erased by reading this chapter. A recent op-ed suggested that the KGY building be retained and used for a brew pub. Here's a different idea. Look at this as an opportunity to put the port's stated environmental values into practice. We no longer permit the construction of overwater buildings. We know that they're bad for the marine ecosystem, including salmon and orcas. So let the lease expire. Require KGY to fulfill its contractual obligation by removing their building and restoring the site. Extend the walking path through this area. Leave the space open for the public to enjoy the amazing views to the north. In short, do something that both helps Puget Sound and directly benefits the people who pay for the trip. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobs. I don't have anyone else on the list for public comment. Is there anyone on the Zoom that would like to make public comment?
I'm not seeing any raised hands.
All right. With that, we will move on to the consent calendar. We have one item on the consent calendar, surplus equipment approval, the crane.
Motion to approve the consent calendar?
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar. We'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Consent calendar has been approved. Moving on to pending issues or business. As Mr. Jacobs pointed out, this is a very special day, and I would just like to say that I am, well, I'm very proud to be of Native heritage and one of two individuals of Native heritage on this commission, and that makes me very happy. And we're today to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day. Our Commissioner Maggie Sanders has a word to share.
Thank you. As an Indigenous person, it is an honor to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day as we elevate our cultures, history, and traditions. It is just as important for all people to know our true history, understand the diversity and depth of Indigenous people, and how hard we've worked for recognition and visibility. Indigenous Peoples Day acknowledges our continued resilience, honors our ancestors and their sacrifices, and celebrates our culture and traditional life ways. It's also a strong reminder that we still exist and we will continue to rise. With strength and resilience, leadership and artistry, Indigenous people have maintained strong and vibrant nations, worked to shape society, and inspired and influenced generation upon generation. We join Indigenous peoples today in celebrating their achievements and their resilience, the story of indigeneity and the story of resilience. Today, we recognize and celebrate the Native nations and their immense contributions to our state's history, culture, economy, and bright future. Celebrating Indigenous Peoples Day encourages a deeper understanding of the past and a recognition of the present day struggles and achievements of Native American communities. Indigenous Peoples Day is necessary because of the invisibility and the erasure of this land's people, relationships, and connections. We are Indigenous every day. So on this day, we shout out in celebration, we are still here. Since time immemorial, Indigenous peoples have been stewards of this land, these waters, and have contributed to the health of the local economy and people in our communities. We're grateful for their contributions and honor Indigenous peoples and their long history, and for continuing to enhance our community for future generations. I would like to invite the community to learn more about Indigenous people of this area and visit the Billy Frank Jr. Park and Trail like the port staff has done today in honor of this day. And recognize the environmental leader and treaty rights activist whose legacy is deeply rooted in his lifelong dedication to protecting the rights of Indigenous people in the environment. The Port of Olympia partnered with the Squaxin tribe and the Frank family to rename the East Bay Park and Trail and installed interpretive signs. The signs share information about Billy Frank Jr., local tribes, salmon, canoe journeys, and native plants. The trail is 1.2 miles long along the waterfront, starting across the street from the Hands-On Children Museum and ending at North Point near KGY and Hearthfire. Throughout Indian country, Indigenous Peoples Day is being observed through prayer vigils, parades, powwows, symposiums, concerts, lectures, rallies, and classrooms, all in an effort to help America rethink American history. For people wanting to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day, look out for community events and learn more about the Indigenous communities in your areas. The growing recognition and celebration of Indigenous Peoples Day actually represents the fruits of a concerted decades-long effort to recognize the role of Indigenous people in the nation's history. Together with Indigenous peoples, we continue to envision and work towards a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanders. That was very nice. Thank you for those words. Okay, let's move on then to our advisory calendar. Item J1 is the 2025 budget, tax levy and non-operating. Jeff Gadman, Thurston County Treasurer, and Tad Koff, Director of Finance. Mr. Gadman, welcome again. It's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's always good to be here, and especially with the ability to talk about a subject that I just absolutely geek out on. And anybody will listen to me. Thank you for your time being here, and thank you for the acknowledgement of the homelands of the indigenous people and the acknowledgement of the Indigenous Peoples' Day. I think it's important that we never, ever lose our history, because that's how you kill a culture. So thank you. So once again, I'm here to talk to you about, let's see, which way does this go? That way. There we go. Talk to you about how the levy process works in relation to the budget that various taxing districts set, including the Port of Olympia. It's, the points that are made here. So the property tax that you pay every year on properties that you own in any given county in Washington are a result of the budget needs that are set by the various taxing districts, including the port, the county, and the fire districts and such. Each fall, the legislative authority of any particular commission or district is required to set a budget, operating budget for the following year, which is a process that you're in the middle of, along with everybody else right now. And so the legislative authority must authorize the levy of property taxes each budget cycle. So you're actually taking two steps, but your legal counsel is telling you this. So you're authorizing an amount of money that is going to be required to keep your operations going for the following year. But then you actually also have to take a vote to levy those taxes. So probably one of the most misunderstood things about our property tax system is how assessed values and levy rates work together. And I like to liken them to being at opposite ends of a seesaw, because as assessed values tend to rise, levy rates will tend to drop, and vice versa. The budget that you set for what your operating needs are for next year is what determines the levy rate. It's not the other way around. And it's a good thing. You don't ever want to you don't want legislative authorities to have control over the levy rates, because that will just mess up the whole system. Because assessed values, you just read in the paper the other day, the average residential assessed value increase was around 5% last year. Well, some went up much more than that, and some went up a lot less than that. So you don't want the rates driving the values. You want the values driving the rates, or the budget driving the rates. The Port of Olympia's boundaries happen to comprise the entirety of Thurston County. And the total taxable value within the district. Oh, okay, so as it increases, the levy rates go down. Oh, and the assessed value of your property. This is a very important thing for property owners to understand. The assessed value of your property does not determine your taxes. And we'll get to more of that in a minute. The assessed value of your property determines your share of a particular taxing district's budget, which is why it's important that your assessed values be fair according to the market. So this is the levy calculation for 2024 for the Port of Olympia. So you submitted a budget to the assessor or to the county of little over 7,849,000. The total, and that's not the total assessed value in the county. That is the total taxable assessed value in the county, which is almost $60 billion. You do a simple division of what your revenue needs are, along with the taxable assessed value that's within your boundaries, and you come up with a levy rate that's just a hair over 13 cents per thousand. The chart on the right shows you the property tax distribution. And what you'll see is that the port this year or in 2023, that's the most recent comprehensive data we have. The port was 1.34% of the total property tax burden in the county. Very, very tiny. And once a levy is calculated, the assessor's office does a very similar calculation for every single tax district. And so where your property is located is comprised of it's layered over by several different tax districts. And so if you live in the city of Olympia, you've got the city, you're paying for county roads, you're paying for the library, you're paying for the port, paying for Medic One. All those layers in each of those districts has a levy rate that is calculated every year. All of those levy rates within that tax code area are added together to come up with the total levy rate for that area. So I'm gonna just walk you through an extremely simple budget example, a couple of them but this is really how it works. This is the meat and potatoes right here. So we're gonna start with a base year, and budget needs for a tax district are $5 million.
Would that,
Yeah, go ahead.
does that mean would that be us,
Excuse me.
this budget need?
Yeah, if this was your
Okay.
hypothetical budget need, so yes. So the legislative authority has determined a budget need of $5 million for the following year. The taxable assessed value has been determined to be $30 billion. So you do a simple division again, and you come up with a levy rate that's close to 17 cents per $1,000 of assessed value. So now we get into the next year. And so in the next year, the legislative authority is given the authority to add 1% to last year's revenue. So 5 million plus 1% equals 5,050,000. And in this example, I left the assessed value static, so you can kind of see what happens when a budget goes up and the assessed value remains static. So we take the 5,050,000, divide it by the 30 billion, and we come up with a rate that was just slightly higher than last year. If you see the base year, 0.16667, when the assessed value stayed the same and we took a 1% increase in budget, levy rate went up to 0.168. So now this is going to be scenario B, in which case the tax district, you have chosen to take the 1% increase, but assessed values also increased 5% at the same time. So again, you walk through the calculation and you come out with a levy rate of 0.160 and some change per $1,000 of assessed value. So there you can see the effect that the increase in assessed values had on that levy rate. So now I want to show you what happens in a second year using the scenario B. So again, we are taking a 1% increase in budget, which brings our total budget need to $5,100,500. The assessed value, the assumption here is that the assessed value went up 7%. So now our total assessed value is close to 34 billion. We do the calculation and now our levy rate has dropped all the way to 0.1513. And so you can see how these two work like a seesaw with each other. So in addition to, so this year, all of the tax districts have been given authority to add up to 1% to their revenue because inflation was higher than that. In addition to that, you get credit for any new construction that was constructed in your case in the entire county for last year that you can apply to the levy rates, and that is outside of the 1%. So getting back to some of the beginning here, basically assessed values and levy rates are on opposite ends of a seesaw. I started working at the county in 1986. Yes, I am old. Um, the average levy rate in the county when I started was around $15.50. Over my time there, it's ranged between $18 and has been as low as $9.50, which was last year. This year, it's about $9.70 per thousand for the average countywide. So considerations when you're going for the 1% limit, and you've got financial advisors that will talk you through all of this. If you don't take the 1%, there is levy capacity that you bank that you can take in future years. But one very, very important consideration to realize with that, if you don't take your 1% or whatever your allowable increase is, you lose the ability to earn interest on that extra revenue. And the last time the port did that, it was for a 5-year period in the mid 2000 teens before my time. Excuse me. And it was a very substantial loss in investment income that the port had. The other consideration with that is if you bank capacity, and then in 5 or 6 years, you suddenly need to take a lot of that banked capacity, you're going to really irritate your taxpayers because the increase is going to be so big in 1 year.
Is it okay to ask questions, Jerry? Or do you want?
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that came up at the WPPA presentation on this was who is tracking banked capacity? Are you tracking that, or is the Port of Olympia tracking that?
Department of Revenue
Department of Revenue
and the assessor's office.
Okay.
Yep. The assessor,
monitoring that.
the assessor and the assessor's office. JJ Olson is the levy specialist there now. And he can answer all of your levy related questions.
Yep.
So considerations again for your revenue needs in the general economy. I mean, and this is thoughts beyond what you need to operate, right? But is the economy moving up or down? You know, is it projected to go up or down? You know, what does the inflation picture look like right now? Because you got to remember, you're setting a budget now that's going to cover the entirety of a year. And if inflation is high or increasing, all of your costs are going to increase during that year that you've tried to project the revenue that you've needed. And then the inflation forecast. And I'm going to tell you right now, nobody knows. Seems to be trending back down to 2%, but honestly, the economy, I think, my humble opinion, I think we've created a completely different type of economic cycle with the COVID pandemic and the shutdowns that we had, because we were seeing patterns we've never seen before. But the economy does seem to be very, very, very resilient right now. If you do find that you have extraordinary revenue needs for the following year, you can ask the voters to allow you to bypass or go over the 1% limit. You just need to get them to vote in favor of that. So now I've had a couple of questions, which I thoroughly enjoy. Does anybody have any additional?
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Gadman?
No question.
So if you think of any, you guys can contact me on email, jeff.gadman@co.thurston.wa.us. You can call me, or you can just wander down to my office at 3000 Pacific Avenue, and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Yes.
If I could just restate what I think I heard. If we vote to take the full percent that we're allowed to, that doesn't mean we have to raise taxes that amount.
You're voting to increase your revenue by that percentage.
Okay.
But the levy rate could still go down.
Yeah. Most likely the levy rates will go down. Typically, again, because we had an average 5% increase in assessed values and revenue only goes up 1%, that's gonna tend to push it down a little bit. So yeah, a lot of people that are on commissions and stuff get really hung up on that levy rate. Please don't pay attention to that because, you know, make sure you've got adequate revenue to serve your constituents. That should be your most important consideration.
I guess I have a philosophical question. Given that inflation outpaces 1%, do you see jurisdictions falling behind or do you see them passing levy lifts or how does that operate in the world?
So, looking at the raw numbers, obviously, if inflation is outpacing what your revenue increases are, you should be going broke, right? So in addition to the new construction, we're very fortunate. We've got so many people moving into the state of Washington and into this area right now that new construction has been keeping up so that we're not quite seeing the effects of inflation like we have or like we would have expected. But in addition to that, so in 2024, you were expecting to collect 7 million and change, but you didn't. Okay, there's things that happen during the year. The assessed value of properties change through Board of Equalization, Board of Tax Appeals. You know, if somebody's property has a garage burned down, then you lose that value and you're not collecting that revenue. So there's what's called a refund levy, which you'll be getting letters on here, or Tad will, from my office because we finished the calculations this week or last week. And that allows you to recoup that lost revenue from those valuation changes. And so that makes you whole, but you're not, that's collecting revenue you were expecting to collect in the first place, which in a balanced budget world, you're spending, right? Anyway, with everything, the new construction, the refund levies and that sort of thing, with taxing districts taking 1%, on average, revenues end up increasing 2 to 3% because of those changes that I mentioned. But if that ever reverses, if we start having an outmigration in population and new construction is not happening anymore, then oh yeah, that inflation will bite us big.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for being here again, very informative and we appreciate that very much.
All right. Well, I appreciate what all of you are doing for the port and the economic development of this county. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Ed, you probably don't have anything to add. I think you're up.
I'd like to start, Tad Koff, Director of Finance, Port of Olympia. I'd like to thank Mr. Gadman for coming by and doing an excellent job of kind of giving the full picture on taxation, levies, and all that good stuff. And he does a very thorough job. I am presenting tonight on the follow-up second use of on the non-operating and tax levy use. I'd like to recognize that regalia always brings a smile to my face. So thank you for indulging and displaying and all of that. It's fantastic. That being said, let's get right to it. Tonight's presentation is advisory only. We're revisiting the second review, so we're going to have some IOUs answered and some updated figures. This is the schedule going through, fairly much the same as the last presentation. We're gonna go through the pictures of IOUs, and review the tax levy, debt review, and then we'll go to questions and answers. IOUs from last time, and I'm gonna apologize, I gotta read off my page because my glasses broke this morning. So I'll be squinting a lot at that screen if I don't look down. One of the questions that I think that came up, this might help with Commissioner Vasavada specifically looking for the average valuation of a home in Thurston County. Now, there are some caveats with this. This is a non-saltwater view family home. And I talked, as Jeff had pointed out, I also talked with JJ Olson at the assessor's office to work this out specifically. So these are straight from the source. The average home in 2025 is $524,000. That was a question that came up. And the tax levies effect in that the assessed value went up by a significant amount is basically $1.14 per household. So that'll go up to roughly, and again, as Jeff said, houses are valued more or less. So this is not going to be every single house or every single instance, but on the average, be $65.14 per household, given that average value. Another question that was asked were, are business lines, environmental costs included under environmental administration? I've checked on that with our head of environment. And none of the costs are under environmental administration or are duplicated elsewhere. So the environmental expenses are currently recorded as direct costs to each business line and are reviewed on an ongoing basis. So hopefully that answers that applicably. And I made the correction of the small cities from 40,000, which was a carryover from an old slide, to 50,000. And then port event sponsorship resolution 2015-09 sent a copy of that around because that was a request as well. And that was all the IOUs from the last presentation. I'm going to go kind of quickly through some of these because these are repeat slides. So we have the policies and procedures that we're operating under on here to reference. And we will get right to the one of the meat of the question slides here. This is again, the recommendation of staff of taking the 1% and new construction that Jeff mentioned as well. Last year's tax levy amount was just under 7.8 million at 7.778. The new construction, the 1% would be 78,000, and the tax levy increase for new construction would be 121,000. So those are those components that Jeff was mentioning as well. I'm not sure he had the rates quite right on our millage rate. Our millage rate for 2024 was just under 13 cents at 0.1293. Oh, he may have been rounding up to 13 cents. And then because of the great increase in property values, our millage rate actually went down a hair to 0.1244, which is where he talked about that inverse relationship. That's where you're seeing that. So that, any questions on that slide? Not any changes, I don't believe, from the last time. Okay. And we do have a few changes on the tax levy use slide. Mainly, the big one to point out is the Bud Inlet remediation port share went down significantly. We had over $2 million on there in the first go around. In reviewing that and the utilization of grants and available and being strategic with the state's position and the port's best interest, we've moved that down to 800,000 usage for this coming year. We can go into that more into depth, and when we get into those areas, I'm sure that Sean, our Director of Environmental, will be able to articulate and expand on that. That brings down the net levy funds required from operations or to pull from the reserves, depending on the situation, to just over 1 million at 1,000,066. And other than that, I believe that stayed the same from before. Any other questions on that? Okay. And then most of these are basically have stayed generally the same. This is the salaries and summary of governmental services. Formerly, the commission budget, we're retooling this area again to just make it more sensible and reporting a little bit more clear to those looking at the reporting and transparent as to what's going on. So this is an area that we will look to maybe tweak again in the coming year to make sure that it's tuned into what we want it to show and that it makes sense, but we don't have any changes from last presentation. Excuse me. I didn't bring any water with me. We've got membership and partner cost detail has also stayed the same since the last presentation. No changes. And that gets us through to, I will take advantage of the water. Much better. Commission special projects remain right now. There aren't any. That could change by the time we get to the end of the budget. We've got the debt review. We've gone through, no changes in that from the prior presentation, other than just definitely worth pointing out that in the longer term view, when we get to 2028, we start diving into 2029 with a very large decrease in port debt. So the bond debt will start being really paid off. And I do have a slide, not to go through it specifically, but this just outlines those bonds uses and where they've gone, what they've gone to support for reference. No changes to that. And then the remaining budget timeline, I should have knocked off the first two dates there. We've got October 21st is going to be the first review of a comprehensive operating budget, which will have this in it. You'll also see the capital investment plan in review, and we will look through each operating unit as well. So it's going to be a fairly large go through. That's our first iteration of that. First look, and obviously there'll be discussion. That's going to be a work session. And then we'll go around for a second review of that, following up to that. And then we'll go through the rest of the regular budget process as well. And that brings me to questions. I said it was going to be quick.
Any questions or comments for?
I had a question on the commission special projects. I know that it had been talked about allocating some. And you mentioned that might change. Is that something that's in the works, or we're having further discussion about it?
Yeah,
You're
it's in the works as a line item in the capital projects, the capital investment plan, because the thinking was it would be a capital project, most likely. So that's where it will show up at the work session.
I have a question. So this presentation included in slide 3, sort of a tax levy calculated proposed amount. So 1% plus new construction, was that for illustrative purposes, or is that what we are anticipating for the budget that you're currently?
No, that's the actual from the assessor's office. I sat down
Just for our information.
on this presentation. That will be what we will end up adopting. The vote will be with that. That is the calculated amount.
And
Okay, the amount that we're calculated to need.
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Gatton's presentation was for illustrative purposes. So the numbers he had were for illustration, whereas the numbers Tad has are the ones that we are.
Actually calculated directly for the port. Yeah.
Well, when we're actually calculating our budget for the port, are we anticipating adopting the full 1%?
Yes.
What we're recommending.
Okay, that's what you're, thank you.
But if you wanted to have a commission discussion about the 1%, that this would be the time to.
Yeah, well, it would be important to me because I understand what he said is levy what you need, but it seems to me that with our environmental cleanup obligations, sort of it would be important to maximize what we can allocate to that, if up to the 1%.
I would agree.
So, thank you. So you've confirmed that's what you're already proposing.
Yes.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
It went from $134 to assessed value, $1,000 of assessed value to 114. Is that right? So the
Can we
saving.
go back to that slide? You see?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Do that again. Look. So we're 1.14 now, but before it was 1.34.
It was, the millage rate was 1.293 in 24, and it will go to 1.244. So the valuation on the properties across Thurston County went up by roughly $4 billion. So when Mr. Gadman was saying that teeter-totter, that inverse relationship, and it's counterintuitive in a sense that sometimes it goes down, but it goes up and vice versa. In this case, the valuation went up enough that our percentage, we can still get it, but the actual millage rate, because the value went up so much, went down.
The end result is people's tax bills would go up over last year due to this by
Yes.
$1.14.
Yes.
Okay.
On the average.
The rate at
on
which
that
they're taxed, it
Going
still goes
It's still
down.
coming down. That's what I was trying.
Okay, it's very weird.
It's a hard thing to wrap your head around when you just think about it. It's, which is why Jeff comes in and does that, because honestly, I've looked at his presentation before and I've reviewed it. So if it's worth rewinding and taking a look at these after the fact, it's very useful.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Are we all good there? All right. Thank you, Mr. Koff. Let's see if there's any public comment on the advisory item. Is anybody here? Patton, would you like to make a public comment?
Yes, I sure would. I'm a 42-year resident of District 3, Commissioner District 3. And our home that we built in 1992 has increased in value tremendously. We built it for, I think, $168,000, and now Commissioner Gadman or Treasurer Gadman helped me look it up. Now it's $726,000. But even with that vastly increased valuation, our port tax assessment for 2024 is only $95.06. So if any of you have gone out to dinner or even out to pizza for like 6 people, you'll spend that in one sitting just at Vic's Pizza, let alone if you go to Horsefire or Anthony's, or, you know, it'd be vastly more. So in my opinion, that's well worth it. And that's at 726,000. On the slide that Tad just showed us, it said the median home in 2024 was 494,766. So a lot of people are paying way less than $95.06. So when you look at what the public is getting for that tiny assessment, there's hardly anything lower assessment. There's the PUD and there's noxious weeds, and I think that's it. You know, it's a low, it's just like at the very bottom of the pie chart of what the assessment, you know, the tax pie is. And you think what we get for that, you get all the benefits to the grants to the small cities, which makes a huge difference to them. We get all the community amenities, including the Billy Frank Jr. Trail that Commissioner Sanders was just talking about, all the events that you hold down there at the port, the Swantown the Swantown Marina and the boat works, and the jobs at all the business lines, and the international trade, and the emergency access to the port for natural disasters. All of that doesn't even include any of the wages for the longshoremen, because the port doesn't pay that. The Pacific Maritime Association pays that. So the citizens of Thurston County don't pay for those workers. They do pay for the maintenance workers like the 47B that you're just talking about, and the people at the boat works and out at the airport and all that. But just think of all that the community gets for such a small amount of tax assessment. So I think you need to tell that to the public. More people need to know all that they're getting for such a very small taxation base. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Patton. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to make public comment? Looks like Carla Wolfsburg. Mrs. Wolfsburg, you have the floor. I'm not able to hear you if you're speaking.
Yep, sorry about that.
There you are.
Thank you. So my name's Carla Wolfsburg. I live in Tumwater. I just want to say that when Tad began his presentation all the slides disappeared from the screen for those of us in Zoom land, and it's very difficult to read what's above your heads. We cannot see that. I mean, it's too small. So I think that's something that I would hope could be remedied in the future. It's not something I've seen before, but it happened tonight. So it was a little hard to follow when he was explaining all the different assessment values and so forth. So I just wanted to ask if maybe that could be remedied in the future when he's giving future presentations, or any presentation for that matter. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolfsburg. We will look at that. Is there any other public comment on Zoom?
I don't see any other raised hands, no.
All right, we will move along then. We have nothing on the action calendar and nothing under the action other calendar. So we can move on to commissioner reports and discussion. Commissioner Harding, you like to begin?
Sure. I am so excited to support one of our small cities this weekend for Boo Coda. Keep going. You literally push a casket and see who can do it the fastest. And the county thinks they're going to beat us, and they're not. So I'm just saying, go for it. And my quote of the day is from Helen Keller. And I thought it was apropos for today. And thank you to Commissioner Sanders for your remarks. I wasn't going to say anything because I feel like it speaks for itself, but you know me, I always have to say something. I just feel so lucky to get to work with both Commissioner Sanders and Commissioner Isle. I think that it's so easy to other people when you don't have anyone in your life who represents different groups, and having the privilege of working with this diverse commission specifically today, honoring our Indigenous members is so awesome. And you guys bring such a practical and a lens that's filled with wisdom that I really appreciate. Patience, which I hope to learn from you both. Although the world is full of suffering, it is also full of the overcoming of it.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Harding, Commissioner Vasavita, any reports or discussion?
Well, thank you. You heard from Director Smith that I had the opportunity as a commissioner to attend the Working Lands Tour that was really put on by Thurston County staff for the Thurston County Commissioners. And we spent a fair amount of time along James Road in Rochester. And today I'd like to especially acknowledge those were lands that were from the Upper Chehalis tribe. And in fact, we heard from a member of the James family, Lori James, of the many generations of relationships between her family that settled and the tribe that had such good relationships that the James family was allowed to stay on those lands. We saw the community supported agriculture from the Common Ground CSA that's now taking place on lands that had been generally farmed, and then that the James family sold to the Conservation Land Trust. So to make it more economical for people to be able to do that work. So it was really moving for me. I think I ran for Port Commission in part because I really think that ports in Washington, the smaller ports like ours, are in a time of reimagining ourselves from being just part of like moving goods from here to there to kind of how we sustain our own makers economy here in Thurston County. And the farmers are, of course, core part of that. And I'm proud of our work at the Ag Innovation Center in Tenino, and much more to come. But I was grateful to attend that tour.
Commissioner Tong, you have a report or discussion for this evening?
I wanted to mention our dinner with City of Olympia. I appreciated the opportunity to meet with almost the full council and mayor, build partnerships there. And then as far as the new warehouse goes, I wanted to see about maybe getting a town hall for that before we get started. I mentioned it to Commissioner Vasavita and Director Smith about just getting an opportunity for public comments solely dedicated to the warehouse, and just potentially a presentation from Ashland to the public about what we're proposing and how it would benefit the community.
All right, thank you for that. Is that, okay, town hall type of thing, rather than like a public hearing? Within the meeting, you want to have a separate town hall?
Right, allowing public comment.
Okay, okay.
And then also I just wanted to echo Commissioner Harding's sentiment. She said it as well as I could, that I am so grateful to work with both of you, especially today.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Tong. Commissioner Sanders, anything?
Just happy to be here and working with you all on Indigenous Peoples' Day.
All right, very nice, thank you. Well, I would just like to say I very much enjoyed our dinner with City of Olympia council members, and that was a lot of fun, actually. It was fun to see everybody interacting the way we did, and I think we actually had some good conversations as well. I just want to say also again, Commissioner Sanders, thank you for your comments this evening on Indigenous Peoples' Day. And if I might just add one quick thing, this year, 2024 is the 100th anniversary of the Indian Citizenship Act. It was enacted by the United States Congress on June 2nd in 1924. And I bring it up kind of selfishly because my great grandfather was a lobbyist. He was a member of the Yakima Nation. He was a lobbyist for Yakima, Cowlitz, and Nisqually. And he was one of the lobbyists that compelled the United States Congress to pass that Indian Citizenship Act of 1924, which allowed us all to become citizens. Indians who were born within the United States become citizens and have the right to vote and run for office and all of those things. So I'm grateful to that, and just happy to, or wanted to share that we're celebrating that this year also, so. Let's see, is there any other business?
I just wanted to let the commission know that I represent TRPC on behalf of this board and am bringing up, based on some of the comments I've heard, for potential discussion of more inquiry into ferry service. There was a previous study done, and potentially whether that fits into transportation goals, and further analysis for the 2025 work plan. So letting everyone, I don't know whether that will get added in, but I'm advocating for more information for us to use for our planning.
Yeah, thank you. Any other business? All right, let's move on to meeting announcements.
Announcements, coming up tomorrow night is the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting. It'll 6 p.m. here at our Port meeting rooms. On Monday, October 21st, there is a commission work session at 3:30 in the afternoon. And as Tad indicated, we'll be going over some capital investment plan and the operating budget. On Monday, October 28th at, I think that should be 5:30 p.m. We'll have a regular business commission meeting. And again, here in the same room. And then on Tuesday, November 12th, we'll have a commission meeting because there is a holiday on November 11th. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions on the meeting announcements? All right, hearing none, we will move on then to, we are going to now move into executive session. And this executive session is in accordance with RCW 42-4230-110-1B to consider the selection of a site or the acquisition of real estate by lease or purchase. Do we anticipate, how long do we need? 30 minutes? 20 minutes? 20 minutes? All right, we will excuse ourselves into executive session for 20 minutes and just say we will reconvene at 7 o'clock.
Go back, or will we go into
Executive session. We'll go back up.
All right.